I don't know what you'd call him. I don't know if you call him an academic or because he certainly wasn't an intellectual. He never went to university. We have no record of this guy ever having been born. We have no idea where he's from. He claimed he was from Brooklyn. And yet you can watch interviews with him on YouTube, and he has a very thick Austrian accent. And so I'm looking at the dates of his life, 1902 to 1983. I'm thinking this guy all of a sudden pops up in the United States in the 40s and 50s. I don't know. I feel like this might be a guy who knows a little bit about mass movements if you're picking up what I'm laying down here. He writes this book essentially to explain how it is that people join mass movements. And he comes to some pretty interesting conclusions. One of which is that it doesn't really matter if it's conservative or if it's on the right or if it's on the left. That people who join mass movements, it doesn't really matter what the politics are. The type of a person who joins a mass movement is going to join a mass movement. You know, we wouldn't sit there and say, well, this person's on the left, so they're going to join this leftist movement. No, there's a movement available, and the person's going to show up and go, which am I? Oh, whichever the movement is, and then they join it. But movements are led, as his book suggests, by true believers. So you have a handful of people, a collection of people, who really believe in it. And then you go through a process of getting people to join it. And he explains kind of how that happens. And again, he's not a professor. In fact, he writes his book, he publishes it, well, he gets it published anyway, and he gets offered all these university jobs. You know, Berkeley offered him a position to come and teach there. And he went and taught, I think for like one semester somewhere. And then he was like, nah, that's not how I do my work. I do my work at the docks. So he went back to being a longshoreman. He wrote some more books after that. But that first one, it's great because it's so readable. And it's also so quotable, though. And so it is important that he is an atheist. Because we often, I mean, if you look at the grammar of what he wrote, and I recreate the grammar up here, I write in all capitals. But here, you notice I write in, imitating what we have there. He refers to a God with a capital G. And he refers to a devil with a lowercase g. So he's not just referring to like a specific entity, like the devil. He's referencing a type of a God here, though, which is going back to what you were saying, that he recognizes that there's a benefit to this kind of a belief system. Forgive me, I don't know if it was in this class I was talking. I don't think it was in this class I was talking about it. What kind of things does God encourage you to do? Whether you believe in him or not, whatever. What kind of things does God encourage you to do?
Be kind. Love thy neighbor.
Yeah, so be kind. He encourages you to love your neighbor. And by the way, it's a great thing, by the way, when Jesus gives that command, love your neighbor, the religious leaders around kind of look at him side-eye and go, who is our neighbor? Like, wait, who do you want us to love? Because he was pointing to some very specific people who they did not want to love. Yeah.
Or I would say selfless.
Be selfless. Yeah. Okay. So now, so on. So you can populate this list with all these positive characteristics. So now, a student emailed me recently and was asking me about this dichotomy between good and evil. He's asking me, how do you know what's good? What do you know what's evil? And he's asking me this kind of theological question: so if God created everything, then did God create evil? And the answer to that question is no. Darkness is just the absence of light. When you walk into a room, why is the room so dark? Because there's no light in there, period. If this makes sense? So you can think of sin and evil as simply being the absence of goodness. So if you're living a life that's without kindness, it's unkind, then what kind of a life are you living? Being simple. What's that?
Being mean.
Yeah, being mean, cruel. We say unkind. Yeah.
That's like the nice way of saying it.
Exactly. We can, of course, pile that all up. If you're living a life that is absent of love, hateful life. Yeah. So now you can see that the evil aspects of this is just the absence of this. The absence of selflessness is, of course, selfishness. And so when he references this, that we can't have a mass movement, it can spread without belief in a God. So a mass movement can spread without kindness, love, selflessness. It can spread without any of this stuff. But he's saying that it can never spread without a belief in a devil. So now, of course, the question becomes, who's the devil?
Whoever we believe it is.
Yeah, whoever you believe it is. Fill in the blank. Because who's evil? Well, evil is that monster that's in your closet, right? So the
Yeah.
monster's under your bed. And of course, we already know that what populates the unknown is what's in our imaginations. So the thing that's in your closet is actually the thing that's inside of you. You're projecting out into it. So now, the most popular example, of course, we can look at, go back to Germany, who's the devil?
Hitler?
No. What's wrong with you guys? Hitler's not the devil. He's trying to save you.
Oh, you're right. I guess we would be in Germany.
Yeah, so who's the devil?
The Jews?
The Jews. Look what they're doing to your society. Look what they're doing to your culture. Look what they're doing to poor Kanye.
I was about to say, I was like, yo,
Gotta make a reference to it.
Hey.
You follow. If you're living in the Soviet Union, who's the devil? It's the rich kulaks, the landowners, the people who have money. Whatever group the other side is that we're projecting the evil onto, we have to be against somebody or something. We can't lead a mass movement saying, hey, let's have a mass movement of kindness, love, selflessness. That's a very difficult thing to get people behind. But as soon as you create a devil, because the devil is the thing that threatens you, why do you behave the way that you behave? It's not because you're a bad person. No, you're a very good person. The problem is, it's the devil that's causing you, that causes you to behave the way that you behave. You didn't want to steal that thing. You didn't want to do that thing that you did. It was the devil that made you do it. And so it wasn't so much that German culture and society was bankrupt. It was that the Jews were exploiting it. It isn't so much that communism is an abject failure that always leads to mass murder. No, it was the rich landowners who were forcing everybody to behave badly. So we always have to find a devil of some kind. And you can go back as far as you want. I mean, you can go as recently as you want. Every mass movement focuses on some kind of a devil. Even when we saw recently the protests after the George Floyd incident, who was the devil?
Police.
Defund the police. It's the police. The police are the problem. The police are the problem. Are they the problem? I don't know. Maybe it's the problem with how it's done. I don't know. It's kind of up for you to figure out. But one thing that we can say is that every single place that did defund the police is paying for it right now. And most of them have had to refund them, and of course quietly. But it was always, you had to point to a group. And again, this doesn't mean that the group is good or bad. I'm not saying cops are good or bad. I'm not saying that Jews are good or bad. I'm not saying that the kulaks are good or bad. All I'm saying is that those movements could never have happened if we didn't have the focus of our rage on someone. And so if you want to start a mass movement, it's necessary. And you can see that the terms he uses here, mass movements can rise and spread. Mass movements can rise and spread without belief in God, so it's possible. And by the way, you can kind of get one moving with this. And people will say, oh, like the Crusades. No, the Crusades were actually launched against something. They weren't launched in favor of something. They were launched against something. But he says, but never. He doesn't say, but sometimes, or mostly, or usually. He says, never without belief in the devil. It can't happen without some kind of a thing towards which we direct our anger. Yeah, and it makes sense, by the way. If your life is going well, if things are going good for you, you don't have time to go out and join a mass movement, usually. I mean, even when we have, like this, when I was thinking earlier about some kind of a positive march that we have, I guess you have like the Women's March, you know? But then you can see that there are certain segments in there that join the march because they're going to be against something. So you saw like recently, I think this past year, they were trying to get people to go out there because of abortion rights. And the whole thing was that they were against the Supreme Court decision. Not in favor of just kind of like, you know, womanhood in general, but against a Supreme Court decision. And then when you see that happen, you'll start to see the tone and the tenor of a group change. You'll see the tone and tenor of a movement change as soon as they start to focus on something outside of themselves, something evil out there. There's a different feeling about it. And I've seen this happen. When I lived in Los Angeles, there was a group I would go to every year they have like this little thing. And you could see it shift, and you saw the people shift, you saw the attitude shift, you saw the behavior shift, and it became something very ugly. I guess I would ask you, like, what good comes from mass movements? Can we think of mass movements throughout history that did lead to something positive?
Any of Martin Luther King Jr.'s work?
Yeah. What was that against?
Segregation?
Yeah, it was against segregation. It was against segregation. It was against unequal rights. It was against the maltreatment. So now that's something that, interestingly enough, what was Martin Luther King Jr.'s motivation
Getting white bitches?
What's that?
Getting white bitches?
This guy.
That was a byproduct. that wasn't his main motivation. But that'll be a different class for sure. Anyway, what motivated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Yeah, God. It was a religious thing. When you read his letter from a Birmingham jail, it's amazing to me how many people will hold this dude up and they've never read his letter. They've never read his writings. That letter that he wrote is unbelievable. And when you keep in mind, he wrote the letter from memory. It's phenomenal, dude. And again, this is a guy who had an earned doctorate by the time he was 27 years old. That's really young, man. Most people get their doctorates when they're like in their early to mid 30s. This guy got it when he was 27. It's unreal. But his doctorate's in divinity. He's a priest. He's a reverend. He's a holy man. His belief in ending segregation and promoting equality was based off of the idea that everyone is created in God's image. So he was pointing out this logical contradiction. You have a country which says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed. What's that?
Just men.
Oh God, don't be that person. Well, I'm going to clutch my pearl, say just men. No, he's talking about mankind. Look at the context of it.
There you go.
Yeah. But all men are created equal and are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and
Pursuit of happiness.
pursuit of happiness. Now, when he points this out, they're referring back to this idea that there's a Creator who creates everyone equal. It's humans that then do this. Well, you're not equal because you're a devil. You're not equal because you're a devil. And you're not equal because you're a devil. And then we start to redefine what things mean. This is why it should be so scary to us when we come along and we have terms that we've had for a very long time. And people want to muddy the waters by redefining things. It's not designed to make things clearer for you. Believe that. It's designed to confuse. Because if we call things by their proper names, it makes things simpler and clearer, for sure. When we muddy things, we do it for a reason. And so, I guess the question, whenever you see a mass movement starting to form up, this does happen from time to time. It does happen from time to time. This is still against something. But it's against something because the thing that they're against is contrary to these. For the most part, you're going to find a scapegoat. Someone that people can point to and say, that's the devil. And then attack it and try to build a foundation around it. Be careful. Be very, very careful. Because there's another tendency in all of these movements, which is that once the devil is gone, things are still messed up. So now, what can explain that? Well, it can't be the movement. It has to be that group of devils over there. And so they're always coming up with new groups of devils. Mao Zedong has this idea of a permanent revolution. The idea is that they're always, in communism, they're always weeding out whoever is stopping communism from being successful. It's not that, to them, it's not that the system itself is bankrupt. It's not that the system itself produces mass genocide regularly. It's those damn groups within that are counter-revolutionary. They're causing things to fall apart. So they have to find someone to point the finger at. Problem is, eventually you run out of people to point the finger at. Eventually, because they're all dead.
Oh.
Yeah. Bad for them, but good for the rest of us, right, comrades?
Yeah.
Those of us who survive.
That's where the lessons stand in.
Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms?